My wife's company was on the verge of bankruptcy, so I sold the luxury house and car she once gave me, even added my own years of savings, all to help her get through the crisis. But then the appraisal center contacted me, the property deed was fake, the car purchase contract was fake, and even the luxury watch was just a high-end counterfeit. The bank outright rejected my loan application, saying I had no assets to use as collateral. I argued that my wife had property and assets under her name, and those were marital assets. But the bank replied they couldn't find any record of my marriage. Turns out, even the marriage certificate was fake. Fortunately, when she borrowed money from me to start her company, the IOU she signed for over $10 million was real. Chapter 1. Mr. Oscar, our system shows that you are listed as single and have no assets under your name for collateral, so your loan application has been denied. If you have any questions, feel free to call us again. I listened to the cold, emotionless voice from the bank staff on the phone. I was dazed. How could this be possible? I took out our marriage certificate and looked at the little red booklet I had carefully preserved. Could even this be fake? As I stood in a daze, the sound of a key turning the lock came. It was my wife, Evelyn. She stretched, clearly exhausted, and walked into the bedroom to ask me, Oscar, I went to several banks again today. I finally managed to get a bit of money, but then her eyes landed on the item sprawled casually on the bed, the property deed, car contract, watch, belt, cufflinks. In an instant, her pupils contracted. What are you looking for? A moment later, she seemed to realize her slip, and quickly, smoothly collected those items, flashing a soft smile. Why did you take out all these valuables? I didn't want to tear things apart with her just yet, so I replied casually, I thought about selling them. The company's tight on cash. I want to help out. Evelyn leaned softly into my arms like she had no bones, planting a gentle kiss on my jawline. She wrapped her arms around my neck and said solemnly, no matter how hard things get, I won't let you suffer. I'll cover the company's debts with my dowry. You've stood by me through so much. I once swore I'd treat you well, and I won't go back on that promise. Her face was filled with tenderness, her amber eyes like melted honey, reflecting my silhouette, as if she loved me with all her soul. But I only felt cold, a chill piercing through me, because I knew very well, everything on that bed, which looked like it was worth a fortune, was all fake, utterly worthless, just like our marriage. The next second, Evelyn's phone rang. She sat up, her expression turning serious. She quickly threw on the jacket she had just taken off, ready to leave in a rush. As she reached the hallway, she finally remembered to turn around and say, Oscar, something came up at the company. You might have to eat dinner by yourself tonight. This wasn't the first time she left in a hurry. I used to think she was just busy, that her work kept her running around. I never questioned it. But now, as the company's deputy general manager, how could I not know if there was any urgent business requiring Evelyn's attention? I looked deeply at her and suddenly said, let me take you. Evelyn froze mid-reach for her bag. She seemed troubled, forcing a smile. You work hard too. No need. Just stay home and rest. But I refused to let her brush me off. I was going with her. The moment we stepped outside, I immediately understood why Evelyn had been so resistant. Her first love, Richard, was waiting in the driveway, sitting behind the wheel of a dark green sports car. He rolled down the window, stuck out his hand, and smiled as he greeted Evelyn. President Evelyn, what took you so long? The design of that sports car looked very familiar. It was the same globally limited edition model Evelyn had supposedly bought for me, the same one that appeared on the fake purchase contract I had verified. Evelyn had always told me that the car was still stuck in customs and would be delivered later. Yet here it was, Richard was driving it. Judging from the wear on the tires, he had already driven it for hundreds of kilometers. A shiver ran through me, and a ridiculous thought suddenly flashed across my mind. Richard was Evelyn's first love. Could it be that this car was never meant for me, but for him? I asked casually, hiding my emotions. Evelyn, didn't you say this model was a global limited edition? How come Richard has the same one? Richard, not the least bit embarrassed, didn't even bother getting out of the driver's seat. He said arrogantly, Oscar, this is your car. I picked it up for you so you wouldn't have to go yourself. No need to thank me. Evelyn looked like she was stuck in the middle. She said softly to me, if it bothers you, I can tell Richard to get out. My fists clenched instinctively. Evelyn had always spoiled me. Once, just because a maid accidentally touched my suit without gloves, she scolded them harshly and fired them all. But with someone as blatantly arrogant as Richard, she never showed any temper. Over the years, it's not like I hadn't gotten upset over Richard and Evelyn, but Evelyn always argued that firing Richard would make her look guilty, and keeping him around proved there was nothing between them anymore. And I, like a fool, actually believed her. If I hadn't tried to save the company and stumbled across these clues, I might still be blaming myself for being too petty. Snapping back to reality, I shook my head and calmly said, no need. Some things, maybe I should confirm for myself. I put on a generous expression and said, Since you already have a driver, you two go ahead. I went out earlier too, feeling a bit tired now. Evelyn raised her brows slightly, surprised. Where did you go? I explained. I've still got some savings left. I went to the bank to withdraw them, to help with the company. The next second, Evelyn rushed over and threw her arms around me, burying her head in my chest. Her voice was muffled with emotion. Oscar, having you is the greatest blessing of my life. Once the company pulls through, I'll give you a promotion and a raise. I'll buy you a better house and a better car. Okay. The old me would have held her tightly and said this was what I should do as her husband. But now, all I felt was disgust. I pushed her away firmly and said, come on. Acting cute at your age, President Evelyn, go save your company. I stood in place for a long time, watching the dark green sports car disappear around the corner. A bitter smirk curled on my lips. Evelyn was still trying to sell me dreams, spinning fantasies like nothing had happened. But she seemed to have forgotten. When she started her company and borrowed $10 million from me, she signed an IOU right in front of me. That $10 million was more than enough to crush a company already hanging by a thread. Chapter 2. After seeing her true colors, my gaze became clearer. I brought the IOU to a law firm for verification. The lawyer examined it, nodded, and smiled. This IOU holds full legal validity. According to the written terms, the repayment was due 3 years ago. You can now request the court to enforce repayment at any time. I let out a bitter, self-deprecating laugh. Should I feel lucky? At least the IOU was real. This was the one thing she hadn't faked. My voice was rough as I said to the lawyer, Lawyer Ning, I need to discuss something important with you tonight. Please reserve some time for me, because before that, I had something even more important to do. I then took the forged marriage certificate to the Civil Affairs Bureau to check its serial number. I knew Evelyn wasn't the type to forge things baselessly, just like with the sports car, but I hadn't expected that I would actually find a real couple under that serial number. The groom, Richard, the bride, Evelyn, and the date they registered their marriage was the day before Evelyn and I supposedly got married. My grip tightened around the marriage certificate, so my so-called marriage to Evelyn had been a lie from the very beginning. I still remembered how she avoided my eyes on our wedding day, speaking to me with extra softness and sweetness. Back then, I thought she was just shy. Only now did I realize she was guilty. With a dark expression, I went on to check the ownership of the house Evelyn supposedly bought for me. As expected, the registered owner was Richard. Then I remembered what the appraisal center said. The packaging for all the luxury goods I had were real. It was just the contents that were fake. That meant Evelyn had most likely bought the real items, but swapped them out. And as for who received the genuine goods, there was no need to guess. Armed with this mountain of hard evidence, I returned home and, for the first time, tried to access Evelyn's personal computer. She had always strictly warned me not to touch it, claiming it contained important business documents. I had trusted her completely, never even thinking of opening it. But now, with trembling hands, I typed in Richard's birthday. The screen unlocked. Even though I had mentally prepared myself, the reality still made my heart skip a beat. Inside, Evelyn was chatting with Richard under a secondary account. The two used matching couple profile pictures. Evelyn's contact name for Richard was The Sun, and her own nickname was The Sun Belongs to Me. There were tons of messages between them. The most recent one read, Richard, frustrated and angry. Evelyn, I'm just an assistant right now. Everyone in the company says I'm not good enough for you. It's infuriating. You have to punish Oscar for me. And Evelyn replied almost instantly, of course, I'll pick a good day soon, and kick him out of the company with nothing. How about that? My hand tightened on the mouse, and I let out a cold snort. Kick me out of the company, leave me with nothing. Evelyn must have completely forgotten about the IOU. Right now, her company's cash flow was tight, teetering on the edge of collapse. Let's see what happens when the court summons arrives. Who will be the one ruined and kicked out then? Like a form of self-inflicted punishment, I spent the entire afternoon going through every single chat log. When it came to Richard, Evelyn was always the more talkative one. She shared her life with him like a giddy schoolgirl, even getting jealous when Richard talked too much with other female colleagues. But with me, Evelyn was always polite and reserved, greeting me with robotic regularity, showing just enough concern to pass as attentive. What I used to see as warmth now felt like pure perfunctory routine. As I scrolled down the messages, Evelyn suddenly sent me a text. Oscar, you didn't look too well today. I ordered food for you, it'll be there soon. Only then did I look up and realize it was already dark outside. The old me would have felt deeply touched by a message like that, delighted, even. But now I knew, when Richard lost his appetite, Evelyn would cook for him herself, sometimes even feed him by hand. Love or not, it couldn't be more obvious. But then why would she go to such lengths to deceive me for 7 whole years? Why cover her tracks so thoroughly? Was I still useful to her in some way? I still remembered vividly how she held my hand when signing the IOU, tears in her eyes, swearing with utter seriousness that she would never betray me. I thought our love was mutual, but now, she felt like a stranger, someone I'd never truly known. Snapping out of it, I picked up my phone and replied with a simple, okay. In the past, I would have sent a long, gushing message, love you, thank you my sweet wife, but Evelyn didn't seem to notice anything strange. She casually replied with a silly emoji. That same emoji, I'd just seen it earlier in her chats with Richard. So that's where she got her collection of stickers. I'd once wondered when she started using emojis like that. Turns out, the signs were always there. I didn't waste any more time mourning lost love. I used my phone to record all the chat logs, as evidence, just in case. Once I finished, I headed straight to the law firm to talk to the lawyer. After I laid everything out, the lawyer fell into thought and said, Mr. Oscar, this IOU is legally binding. I can help you file a lawsuit right away. But, your wife is the legal representative of the company. If the company goes bankrupt, she'll bear primary responsibility. He paused, then added gently, while I understand your position, you should be aware that spouses share joint liability. That means you'll also be responsible for the company's debts. You might suffer significant financial losses yourself. Please think carefully. I smiled faintly and replied, Lawyer Ning, Evelyn and I were never actually married. The marriage certificate was fake. Chapter 3. The lawyer widened his eyes, thinking it was all my doing, and gave me a thumbs up with admiration. Mr. Oscar, you really are foresight. Great, I'll draft the complaint right away. I simply smiled without a word. It wasn't foresight. All of this was Evelyn reaping what she sowed. As I walked out of the law firm, my eyes caught the bold headline on a nearby newsstand. An entire front page of the newspaper read, Business Circle's rising star Evelyn splurges again, buys antique brooch for beloved husband. I walked over. The article was nothing more than the usual fluff, talking about how deeply Evelyn loved me, how she had spent a fortune at auctions buying extravagant gifts for me. Now she had bought an antique brooch again. The article praised Evelyn as beautiful and virtuous, a model wife. I gave a bitter chuckle as I recalled the past 7 years of marriage. Everyone thought Evelyn was insanely devoted to her husband, madly in love with me. Every time the company made a bit of money, she would spend it all on me, buying me luxury houses and cars. And in the face of everyone's admiration and compliments, Evelyn would only lean shyly on my shoulder, look up at me with tender eyes, and say, Oscar was there for me when I was a nobody. Without him, there would be no me today. He is my everything. I used to get lost in those tender gazes, even though sometimes I got jealous because of how close she was with Richard. I always believed I was the one being loved, I was the winner. Now I realize, I lost completely. When I got home, I began packing up my things. Just thinking that this house belonged to Richard made my skin crawl like ants were crawling all over me. I felt utterly disgusted. In the past, every time Evelyn had social events, she wouldn't come home before midnight. But today, out of nowhere, she came back unusually early. When she saw me packing, her brows furrowed slightly and she asked with confusion, Oscar, are you heading out? I didn't stop folding clothes and replied calmly, just decluttering. Some things are too old. I don't like them anymore. Time to throw them out. Evelyn was a bit surprised. After all, I'd always been frugal. Wearing the same clothes for 5 or 6 years wasn't unusual. But she didn't question me. Instead, she gave a doting smile. All right, toss out whatever you don't like. I'll buy you all new ones. Her acting really is impressive. If I hadn't started noticing the signs, I would still be in the dark. The next moment, her tone suddenly changed, hesitant. Oscar, the company really is in a bit of a crisis right now. It might need your savings. Don't worry, I'll pay you back soon. And that's when it clicked. So that's why she came back, after my savings. Probably Richard pushed her to. This time, I sat up straight and joked, oh, then you'd better pay me back with the highest interest. Evelyn thought I was just teasing, something playful between lovers. After all, even when we started the business, I handed over my entire savings without so much as a frown. And in these 7 years, I had never once asked her for money. She laughed so hard she could barely keep her mouth closed. I'll write you an IOU right now. I leisurely watched Evelyn seriously write the IOU, sign it, and even stamp it with her personal seal. This trap, she walked into it herself. She has no one to blame. Let's see now. Once I collect this IOU and her company goes bankrupt, how exactly is she going to repay this new $5 million she just borrowed from me? Dusting off the still warm IOU, I was in high spirits. I let out a yawn and ushered her out of the room. Evelyn, it's getting late. Go sleep in the guest room. I still need to pack. Don't want to disturb your rest. Holding a bank card and smiling, she told me to rest early too. I had a wonderful night's sleep. The next day, I deliberately carried all the fake luxury goods Evelyn had bought me over the years and headed to the company, ready to confront her and walk away once and for all. But the moment I stepped into the company, I was greeted by a noisy crowd. There was a celebration going on. On stage, Evelyn smiled as she handed an appointment letter for vice president straight into Richard's hands. Below the stage, Thunderous applause erupted from the staff. From the looks of it, they had arranged everything beforehand. Everyone knew but me. I stood at the entrance and asked calmly, "And what about me?" Evelyn looked a bit flustered, pulled me aside, and whispered, "Oscar, I'm doing this so you won't be too tired. Be good. Okay, just relax at home from now on. Let others handle the work." If it were the old me, I might have fallen for her sweet words, thinking she truly cared about me. But now I knew, this was all just to pave the way for Richard's rise. So I furrowed my brow on purpose and pretended to look heartbroken as I resisted. "But I want to help you. I don't want Richard to take my position. Unless, do you still have special feelings for him deep down?" Evelyn's brows knitted tightly, just about to speak, but Richard, up on stage, let out a cold snort and mocked, "Oscar, why are you rambling so much? Are you trying to challenge the CEO? Is this company Evelyn's or yours? You're just a freeloader, acting like you're something special." He wore a custom-tailored suit, full of arrogance, striking a pose befitting a vice president. The style of that suit, I recognized it right away. It was from Evelyn's go-to personal designer. Clearly, Richard thought he was about to ascend to power and no longer felt the need to keep up appearances. Evelyn, instead of being angry at Richard's arrogance, turned to me and said, "Oscar, I've already made my decision. Please don't make things difficult for me, all right?" As she spoke, she took the lead and began clapping, signaling everyone to join in congratulating Richard on his promotion. With the CEO applauding, everyone naturally followed, offering loud praise. "Congratulations, President Richard. From now on, our company will thrive under you and CEO Evelyn. I always knew you had the aura of a true leader, so impressive and charismatic." Looks like I was right. Among the cheering crowd, I alone remained motionless. Richard basked in the flattery, clearly delighted. Seeing I stayed silent, his eyes gleamed with malice. He deliberately picked on me and asked with a sneer, "Oscar, everyone else is congratulating me. Are you looking down on me?" Evelyn, now fully invested in Richard, tugged my sleeve gently and coaxed, "Just give Richard some face. All right, today's a happy day. Don't make things ugly." I still said nothing, even let out a quiet, cold chuckle. Evelyn's face darkened, and she warned in a low voice, "Oscar, if you keep this up, I'm going to get angry." In the past, whatever she said, I followed without hesitation. But now, seeing I remained unmoved, Evelyn's eyes blazed with fury. She snapped, "Oscar, I was planning to keep you in the company, but if you keep acting like a child, I'll really send you home." All I felt was bitter irony. I curved my lips into a smirk and stepped forward. Evelyn thought I was finally giving in and visibly relaxed, but in the next second, I picked up the pile of counterfeit goods I'd placed at my feet just moments ago, and then I tossed them directly onto Richard and Evelyn. "To the CEO and Vice President, my gift to you both. Do you like it?" Chapter 4. Like a shower of confetti, all sorts of items, contracts, ties, belts, brooches, rained down on the two of them. Evelyn instinctively shielded Richard, and the hard edge of a property deed struck her temple, leaving it red and swollen. Everyone was stunned, staring at the property deeds and marriage certificates scattered across the floor. They couldn't understand why the usually mild-mannered me had suddenly lashed out, especially at my loving wife. Evelyn was dumbfounded too. Something seemed to click in her mind, and she ignored the injury on her forehead as she hurriedly said, "Oscar, let me explain." I gave a cold laugh. "Explain what, Evelyn? You and Richard are so in love, don't drag me into it. It's disgusting." Evelyn's face went pale, and panic flashed across her features. She instinctively retorted, "It's not like that. I." She stammered without saying anything meaningful, then suddenly hardened her expression and looked up at me, speaking in a pitiful voice. "Richard's name might be on the deeds, but you're the one who got to live the rich life. You enjoyed the admiration of everyone. Can't I at least fulfill his small wish?" The way she said it, it was as if I were the unreasonable one, and poor Richard was some tragic figure being wronged. I never would have dreamed Evelyn could twist the truth so shamelessly. The crowd around us had now gotten their full fill of drama and started whispering among themselves. Richard looked defiant, no longer pretending. He boldly wrapped his arm around Evelyn's shoulder and smugly declared, "Since you know the truth now, why don't you get lost already? Your luxury house is mine, your car is mine, Evelyn is mine, and the company is mine too." A smug smile curled on his lips, fully convinced he was the ultimate winner, and he looked at me with utter contempt. "You're just a clown. If I were you, I'd crawl into a hole and never come out, and yet you still have the nerve to show your face here." Everyone looked utterly shocked. No one had ever imagined that the so-called husband-obsessed Evelyn would have an affair. I, however, simply looked at Evelyn and said indifferently, "Is that so, Evelyn? Is that what you really think too?" Evelyn's gaze flickered, her brows furrowed deeply. She let out a sigh and murmured, "Oscar, I've wronged you. You can ask for anything you want." I scoffed and replied with disdain, "Ask for something. Do you even have the ability to give it? Your company is on the verge of collapse. Before Evelyn could respond, Richard burst into arrogant laughter. You still don't know, do you? Evelyn's company is doing just fine. There's nothing wrong with it. You were dumb enough to hand over your savings to help her. What an idiot. Instead of getting angry, I smiled even wider and said leisurely, Richard, so what if you're vice president now? Do you even own shares in the company? One word from Evelyn and you're out. And you're still strutting around like you're important. Evelyn immediately jumped in to defend him, scolding sharply, Oscar, stop spouting nonsense. I gave Richard half of my shares. He's more qualified than anyone to be vice president. I sneered silently. I'd been with Evelyn for 8 years, married for 7, and she never once talked about giving me equity. But for Richard, she generously handed over half the company. Fine by me. When the company goes under, the 2 shareholders can spend the rest of their lives paying off the debt. As if the universe had a sense of timing. Just then the company security reported that a group of people speaking legal jargon had arrived and wanted to come in. Evelyn's expression softened. She turned to Richard and gently explained, they should be the lawyers I called. They're here to handle your equity disclosure. From now on, you'll be our company's official vice president. Seeing that I remained silent, Richard thought I had accepted defeat and let out a wild laugh. Oscar, I'm about to become the boss of a publicly listed company, and you're just a worm. The former school heartthrob, look at you now. What a joke. Someday, when you're on your knees begging, I might throw you a scrap of food. Evelyn, on the other hand, looked at me seriously and said in a low voice, Oscar, if you admit your fault now, I can pretend none of this ever happened. I simply shook my head. Immediately, the onlookers all wore amused expressions, waiting for drama, expecting me to blow up and go at them. But what none of them expected, the next moment, walking into the company lobby was not a group of lawyers, but a team of uniformed officers. Who is Evelyn? This is a court summons. You are required to repay the debt owed to Mr. Oscar immediately. Otherwise, we will initiate asset freezing procedures and shut down your company. Chapter 5. In an instant, everyone looked as if they'd been struck over the head, shock written across their faces, as they all turned to Evelyn in unison. I sighed inwardly. Perfect timing. When this case wraps up, I'm definitely treating Lawyer Ning to a nice dinner. It took Evelyn a while to recover. She tried to keep her composure and frowned at me. Oscar, was this your doing too? What's gotten into you today? Are you trying to stir up endless trouble? I sneered silently. Judging by her reaction, she probably thought these court officers were just hired actors, sent by me to make a scene. Richard rolled his eyes and even stepped forward, trying to mess with the officers. Hey man, where'd you rent that uniform? Looks pretty legit. How much did Oscar pay you guys? Before I could say a word, the court officers had already turned serious and addressed Evelyn. Are you the legal representative of this company? If you do not wire the owed amount to Mr. Oscar's account within 3 days, we will proceed with forced execution. Your company's assets will be frozen and the business will be shut down. As they spoke, they pulled out their credentials and displayed them. Richard's hand froze midair, and he looked helplessly at Evelyn. Evelyn, is this for real? Evelyn clenched her fists so tightly her long nails dug into her palms, but she seemed numb to the pain. With her experience, of course she could tell this was no joke. She just couldn't understand, what debt was she supposedly being called on to repay? Then it seemed to dawn on her. Her eyes turned razor-sharp as she glared at me and snapped. So yesterday, when you made me write that IOU, this was your trap all along. Very clever of you, Oscar. Then she turned to the court officers and protested. You must be mistaken. That IOU was signed only yesterday. How could repayment be due today? One of the officers replied coldly. MS. Evelyn, if you have any objections, please consult your lawyer. We'll be taking our leave. Wait. Evelyn tried to stop them, but failed to catch up as the officers left the premises. Turning back, she frowned at me. Oscar, really? You're demanding repayment today for something signed yesterday? What's the point? I responded flatly. No, this isn't the money you borrowed yesterday. This is the first debt, the 10 million. The sword that had been hanging invisibly over her head had finally dropped. What a shame. Evelyn had no idea. Still under the illusion that everything was under her control, she sighed helplessly at me. Come on, Oscar. Stop joking. When did I ever owe you 10 million? I only borrowed 5 million yesterday. Don't you know falsifying IOUs is illegal? You clearly know the company's struggling. Do you really have to go this far? She paused. Then her tone softened. Besides, would you really ask me for money? Fine. I'll give you 10% of the company's shares. That's enough, isn't it? She looked at me like she was making a huge concession, as if I should be grateful. Her eyes held a faint trace of reproach. Richard let out a long breath and sneered. You sure know how to make a scene. Not afraid of getting arrested. Huh? Watching Evelyn's completely unfazed expression, I realized she really had forgotten. How ironic. She had truly forgotten those words she once whispered while clinging to me, that she would never let me down. No wonder she could so shamelessly fawn over Richard now. handing me one fake gift after another with a straight face. Snapping back to the moment, I chuckled coldly. Evelyn, you really do have a selective memory. Have you even once thought about where your startup capital came from? Without hesitation, Evelyn shot back. Of course it was from my own hard work. Then, as if something suddenly clicked, her face turned pale, her voice grew smaller and smaller, until it was barely audible. Richard, still clueless, just scoffed. Don't tell me it came from you. Evelyn told me when we broke up, she wanted to succeed by her own effort, so she'd be worthy of me if it weren't for you still being of some use. You think she'd have put up with the disgust of being with you? Evelyn suddenly grabbed Richard's arm, whispering, enough, stop talking. I merely smiled. Oh, that's impressive. Then, I pulled out the carefully preserved IOU from my pocket and held it up. Then what's this? Chapter 6. The crowd had gotten their fill of drama, glancing around with eager eyes, looking at the IOU with that still slightly immature signature. Evelyn's face darkened even more. She took a deep breath and spoke in a calm voice. Oscar, calm down. Let's talk. Okay, you know the company's cash flow is a bit tight right now. In front of the others, she chose her words carefully, trying not to stir up panic among the staff. But I knew the truth. The company was barely balancing its books. One debt collection could tip it over, let alone this 10 million yuan debt. Richard, unaware of the real situation, finally caught on and scoffed with disdain. Pfft, it's just 10 million. What's the big deal? Our company pulls in billions in revenue. Why would we care about that small change? Then he shouted, finance, transfer the money to Oscar now. Let's not let some outsider look down on us. Shut up. Evelyn's face grew uglier by the second. Her voice was sharp, almost gritted between clenched teeth as she snapped at Richard. It was probably the first time Richard had seen Evelyn this furious, cold and distant. He was clearly upset by it. Drooping his eyelids, he muttered in disdain, come on, Evelyn, I'm just telling it like it is. Don't tell me you still have feelings for Oscar. He's just a freeloader. You're still standing up for him. I was already bored of this farce. I said coolly, you two better think about how to come up with the money in 3 days. Evelyn bit her lip so hard it drew blood. She took a step forward, wrapped her arm around mine, and softened her tone. Oscar, we were married. That bond has weight. This company, it's our joint effort. Do you really have the heart to do this? All right, I know I went a bit too far this time. You want the vice president position, right? I'll make Richard step down. Okay. Step down. You'd think I was the one stealing his job. I let out a cold laugh and immediately flung her hand off. I brushed off my sleeve like it was contaminated, my tone icy. Evelyn, enough. If that 10 million doesn't land in my account, see you in court. Without giving her stunned expression a second glance, I turned and walked away. I had already made arrangements with my buddy yesterday to crash at his place for a few days. Not long after, I arrived downstairs with my luggage. My old friend Gabriel was already waiting. He cheerfully grabbed my suitcase and ushered me in, laughing. Well, if it isn't the whipped husband himself, what brings you to my humble abode? I smiled. Didn't you say you wanted to start a company before? How about I help you do it now? Back when the company Evelyn and I ran was doing well, Gabriel had wanted to invest, but Evelyn wasn't too keen, so it was shelved. Later, Gabriel thought about starting a similar business himself, but didn't want to hurt our friendship by becoming a competitor, so he gave up on the idea. Now, he has the capital. I've got the skills and experience. Why not make it happen? Gabriel looked surprised. Wait, what? Oscar, what happened? Talk to me. Did Evelyn do something to you? I was silent for a moment, then gave him a concise summary of what had gone down. Bang. Gabriel slammed his fist on the table and exploded in rage. That woman Evelyn is really something else. How could she dare deceive you? You gave her all your savings back then. I told you to think twice. I thought you two were genuinely in love over the years, and I was happy for you. Who would have thought she'd pull something like this? Before I could even respond, his words fired off like a machine gun. And I always thought that Richard guy was shady. Don't you remember, just 2 days before your wedding, I saw him kneeling in front of Evelyn. I told you something was off. I dug through my memories and found the incident. That's right. When I found out back then, I confronted Evelyn, but she just looked at me with sincere eyes and said, Oscar, do you really not trust me? Yes. Richard came to see me, but I turned him down. If you only trust your buddy and keep doubting me like this, maybe we shouldn't even get married. I was terrified she'd cancel the wedding. I ended up comforting her endlessly, and even grew distant from Gabriel because of it. Looking back now, it had all been a red flag from the start. I let out a soft sigh, took a big swig of beer, crushed the can in my hand, and tossed it into the trash. Waving it off, I said, forget it. It's all in the past. Let's just talk about the company. Yeah. But right then, my phone suddenly rang. I glanced at it. Evelyn was calling. I was about to hang up, but Gabriel grabbed the phone and answered it for me, slurring aggressively. She still dares to call. Watch me curse her into next week. But in the next second, the voice from the other end, Evelyn, who had always sounded calm and composed, was trembling, completely unsteady. You're not home. Everything's gone. You said you'd stay with me for life. How could you go back on your word? Chapter 7. I gave a bitter, mocking laugh. Spend my whole life with her. Yeah, that's what I once believed, and what I had done. I held her in the palm of my hand, treated her like a treasure. And how did Evelyn repay me? With lies. Everything was a lie. In my ear, her trembling voice continued. Oscar, come back. If you come back, I'll transfer the house to your name, and the marriage certificate will reapply. Okay, we'll redo everything. Just come back. The corner of my mouth curled into a sneer. Even if she was willing to do that, do you think Richard would just give up his bone after biting down on it? It was obvious, she was just using this as a bargaining chip to trick me into going back, and I knew exactly why. Snapping back to reality, I replied calmly, Evelyn, I won't be dropping the lawsuit. The company, just wait for it to go bankrupt. Evelyn's tone immediately turned desperate. You think I'm asking you to come back because of the company? How could you even think that? Did the 7 years of our marriage mean nothing to you? Do we really need a piece of paper to prove it? She paused, then asked hesitantly, why is it impossible to drop the lawsuit? Tell me what you want. Before I could say anything, Gabriel let out a snort of laughter. Then he burst into a loud, mocking laugh and snapped coldly into the phone. You don't deserve my brother. You think the company succeeded because of you. If Oscar hadn't worked himself to the bone behind the scenes, you'd have gone bankrupt ages ago. He wasn't done. Oh, and by the way, we're starting a company together. Yeah, that's right. We're about to become your competition. Oh wait, if your company survives that long, that is. On the other end, Evelyn's voice suddenly dropped cold. Gabriel, what right do you have to speak about my relationship with Oscar? He only started doubting me because of you, and now, you're trying to ruin things again. She then returned to her old condescending tone and scolded me coldly. Oscar, how many times have I told you, stop hanging out with losers like Gabriel. He'll only drag you down. Be good, listen to me, and come home. The antique brooch I bought at the auction just arrived. Come try it on. I let out a silent, sarcastic laugh. Even now, she thought I was just sulking, that a little trinket or sweet talk could buy me off, that I was still the Oscar who loved her to the core. I said icily, Evelyn, who do you think you are to tell me what to do? My debtor, a stranger, or Richard's wife? My words hit her like a slap. She sucked in a breath, barely holding back her rage, then spoke slowly. I know. That's the thing that's been eating away at you. Before the wedding, Richard had depression and tried to kill himself. When I got there, he was already standing on the rooftop. If I hadn't agreed to marry him, he really would have jumped. Oscar, that's a human life. If I don't marry him, he'll die. Does she even hear herself? Does that logic make sense? More likely, her feelings for Richard never truly ended. She got emotionally involved and made an irrational choice. She paused for a second, then said, back then, when I got together with him, I promised I would marry him. You know I'm not someone who breaks promises. But over all these years, we never crossed the line. Nothing ever happened between us that would betray you. I cut her off coldly. That's enough. I don't care anymore. Evelyn, don't contact me again. I truly wish you and Richard a long and happy life together. Chapter 8. Evelyn finally lost control. Her voice, distorted and amplified by the call, suddenly surged. How could you bless me and him to live happily ever after? I'm your wife. Oscar, have you lost your mind? I rolled my eyes internally. So stubborn. You were sharp enough when scheming against me, and now you're pretending you don't understand a word. Too late. I didn't bother with her any further and hung up the phone. 2 days later, Lawyer Ning informed me that Evelyn's account was out of funds. The court had enforced a freeze on her bank cards and transferred the $10 million to my account. Now, her company's cash flow had completely collapsed. It was essentially beyond saving. I asked. She didn't sell her house or her car. Lawyer Ning sighed softly. Her husband Richard flat out refused. I'm not sure what he told her, but she eventually decided to take on all the debt alone. I let out a cold chuckle. Didn't expect that. Evelyn really does love Richard. Huh. At this point, even knowing Richard's no good, she's still willing to carry everything on her own. But what does that have to do with me? My expression turned indifferent as I said suddenly, oh right, I still have an IOU from her. Once the deadline hits, please help me file another lawsuit. Lawyer Ning looked at me with newfound respect. This move alone would drag both of them down again, permanently. After leaving the law firm, I went with Gabriel to scout locations for the new company. We quickly settled on an entire floor in an office building. I thought things would end there, that I'd never have to deal with Evelyn and her mess again. But to my surprise, Evelyn made a dramatic comeback. Her company, once on the brink of bankruptcy, somehow came back to life. No idea where she got the investment from. Still, that too was part of her strength. Fate is fate. I'll just take what I'm owed. No need to say more. 3 months later, at an industry seminar, I ran into Evelyn. She was wearing a high-end custom gown, leaning softly against Richard, playing the part of the doting wife. Had I not seen it with my own eyes, I would never have imagined the once decisive and dominant CEO turning into this. I rolled my eyes internally and was about to walk past, but she suddenly stepped in my way, blocking my path. She lifted her gaze, pride written all over her face, and said coldly, "What, Oscar, feeling guilty? So you're trying to avoid me? Guilty? Who's the guilty one here?" I replied coldly, "Well, if it isn't the famous CEO Evelyn. By the way, when are you paying back that $5 million you borrowed from me? Don't forget, I'm charging you the highest possible interest." Evelyn raised her slender neck and locked eyes with me. "That little amount? Of course I'll pay it back. You clearly don't know, but I've partnered with a major international corporation. They're giving me unlimited funding. You, on the other hand, are just a small-time loser, still fussing over interest. Wait a minute, unlimited funding? That screams scam." But I didn't feel the need to warn her. No reason to dirty myself trying to save her. I simply let out an "oh" and replied, "Well then, CEO Evelyn, if you're so rich, why haven't you paid me back yet?" Evelyn looked dismissive and tapped on her phone casually. And just like that, she really transferred the $5 million over. Before I could say anything, Richard, who had been holding Evelyn by the waist, finally couldn't hold back. He let out a mocking laugh. "Oscar, getting worked up over $5 million? How petty. I heard you started a company. How's that going? If you're strapped for cash, just get on your knees and give me 3 loud kowtows. Maybe I'll overlook the past and toss you some investment." I looked at Richard suspiciously. Evelyn being smug was expected, but Richard acting like a nouveau riche, both wrists flaunting luxury watches, jewel-studded pins and cufflinks, glittering so hard they could blind you. If their company were truly doing well, I might understand, but they'd just barely crawled out of a financial disaster, and they already have spare cash. Seeing my skeptical expression, Richard cleared his throat. "What? Don't believe me? I've got 50 million in chips over in Las Vegas, and I'm just getting started. You'll never measure up to me." Chapter 9. Las Vegas. Well, that explains everything. So they'd taken it to the gambling tables. I suddenly remembered what Lawyer Ning had said, that they refused to sell their house or car to cover their debts. Now it made sense. They probably used them as collateral for chips. Too bad. Gambling is a near-guaranteed loss. No way I'd get myself tangled up with those two again. Snapping out of my thoughts, I replied calmly, "No thanks. I prefer earning money the solid way." The two of them looked like they wanted to say more, but the next second, a slender hand wrapped around my arm. My secretary, Selena, leaned in, panting slightly. "Sorry, Mr. CEO. My heel broke just now. I went to the restroom to fix it." Selena was a fresh graduate this year, but highly competent. I appreciated her professionalism, so I brought her to nearly every business event. I curved my lips into a smile. "It's fine. Let's go." Selena nodded. Her gaze drifted to my slightly crooked tie, and without a word, she reached up to adjust it for me. She also played a second role I had assigned her, my girlfriend, in public. It made it easier for her to interact with reps from other companies. I was just about to respond, when a sharp shattering sound of glass suddenly rang out beside me. I turned toward the noise. Evelyn had crushed the wine glass in her right hand, completely shattered it in her grip. Red liquid, whether wine or blood, was dripping onto the floor, blooming like little roses. But Evelyn seemed totally unaware. Her beautiful eyes locked onto Selena, voice like an ice storm. "Oscar, who is she?" Selena was clearly confused. I stepped forward and gently shielded her behind me, speaking with measured calm. "She's my girlfriend." "Why, CEO Evelyn, do you have a problem with people falling in love?" Evelyn's eyes reddened even more. Richard was a beat slower to react, grabbing Evelyn's bloodied hand filled with shards of glass, and exclaimed, "Evelyn, I'll go find medical staff. Don't move." With that, he ran off, but Evelyn stood there like a glitching robot, frozen and oblivious to everything, just staring at me in a daze. After a long pause, her voice rasped from her throat. "Impossible." I didn't quite understand what she meant, but she seemed to convince herself otherwise. Her gaze sharpened, and a smug smile appeared. "There's no way you found a new girlfriend in just 3 months. Oscar, you knew I'd be at this gala tonight. You brought her to provoke me, didn't you?" I frowned. "CEO Evelyn, please stop flattering yourself." But it was like she didn't even hear me. She pulled a small jade pendant out of her bag, dangling it from her finger. She softened her voice, like she was granting a royal pardon. "Come on, Oscar, drop the act. It's been 3 months, haven't you had enough? Remember this pendant? You left it behind. Clearly you wanted me to remember what we had. I admit, you mattered a lot to me." Her tone grew increasingly gentle. "Come home. As long as you do, I'll forgive everything." I stared at the small jade amulet in her hand. It was something we'd picked up during a trip when we were deeply in love, just a random stone we had polished into a jade piece pendant. A symbol of our relationship. The jade wasn't high quality, lots of impurities. Yet Evelyn had kept it carefully all this time. The reason I hadn't taken it with me when I left was simple: she had locked it in her safe. I never had the combination. Any item that symbolized us as a couple, I had already destroyed every last one. And now, after all this time, here it was again. I lowered my eyes and reached out to take the pendant from Evelyn. Her eyes lit up, and a soft laugh escaped her lips. I knew it. You. Her sentence broke off. At the same time, the clear, brittle sound of jade shattering rang through the room. Chapter 10. Staring at the shattered jade on the ground, Evelyn looked utterly stunned, staring at me in disbelief. She stood frozen, like a statue turned to stone. I couldn't care less about how she was feeling. What mattered was that I was finally in a better mood. I gave a nonchalant smile. Ah, my bad. I forgot to throw out that piece of junk. Thanks for bringing it over. With that, I gestured for Selina to leave with me. But just as I turned around, Evelyn grabbed me. Her bloodied hand clutched my arm, leaving a red, smeared handprint. I thought she was angry that I'd embarrassed her multiple times tonight. What I didn't expect was the panic written all over her face. Her voice lowered in desperation. Oscar, don't do this. You didn't like the pendant, right? That's fine. I'll buy you a new one. Just don't be like this. I tilted my head. Be like what? Was my expression that bad? Evelyn, however, kept mumbling, and without warning, tears slid down her cheeks. She looked helpless, like a child. You weren't like this before. You never ignored me when I got hurt. You were never cold to me back then. Your eyes only ever saw me. I let out a mocking laugh. Was Evelyn seriously still living in some fantasy? Two-timing and still dreaming of a fairy tale? But she seemed obsessed, continuing to plead with me. Oscar, can't we just go back to the way things were? I'll let you spend all my money. Okay, let's go to the real estate office right now. I'll buy you the best house. I frowned and forcefully pulled her hand off me. CEO Evelyn, we're adults. Don't you know what it means to part on good terms? She winced in pain, shrinking back, staring at me in a daze. Right then, Richard returned with medical personnel. Seeing Evelyn's red, teary eyes, he immediately grabbed my collar, fist raised. Oscar, you just don't know what's good for you. If I see you harassing Evelyn again, making moves on my woman, I swear I'll beat you to death. Here we go again. I rolled my eyes internally. This kind of street thug energy, the fake tough guy bravado, always trying to act like some gangster boss. I honestly didn't understand how Evelyn had fallen so hard for someone this crude and uncouth. I replied with calm indifference. Richard, are you not aware that this event is under police security? Richard's eyes were filled with fury. He clearly wasn't listening. He sneered. You think I'm scared of the cops just because you said so? I looked past him, directly at the line of uniformed officers now entering the venue, and said seriously, the police are here. Keep bluffing, you piece of. Just as he was about to throw a punch, Richard's hand was caught and pinned. The next moment, a pair of cold handcuffs clicked shut around his wrists. Beside him, Evelyn, who was having her wound cleaned with iodine, was also taken into custody. One officer stated firmly, you two are suspected of illegal gambling. Please come with us. Later, I saw in the news that Evelyn's so-called funding had come from loan sharks, and Richard had gotten involved in shady underground operations. Both of them were dealt the punishment they deserved. 3 years later, Evelyn was released from prison, but buried in massive debt. She lived day to day in hardship, relying on a roadside stall to survive. As for Richard, he never changed. He eventually lost everything at the gambling tables and vanished without a trace. Meanwhile, the company Gabriel and I built flourished. We were on the verge of going public. We stood together, posing for a photo in front of our company building. On my left stood my best friend, Gabriel. On my right, my beloved, Selina. My heart was at peace. And the future? It looked just as bright.